The morning mist hung over the Norfolk countryside like a gentle veil, but, inside the ancient walls of Sandringham House, a different kind of tension filled the air. King Charles III stood at his bedroom window, watching the early December frost glisten on the estate grounds where his family had gathered for Christmas for over a century. In just a few hours, he would step outside those protective gates for the traditional Christmas morning walkabout, but this year would be different. This year, everything had changed. The weight of the crown still felt foreign on his shoulders, even months after his coronation. As he adjusted his tie in the mirror, Charles couldn't shake the feeling that this Christmas walkabout would either unite his fractured family or expose the deep cracks that threatened to tear apart the monarchy itself. Outside, hundreds of well-wishers were already gathering along the familiar route to St. Mary Magdalene Church, their breath creating small clouds in the crisp winter air. They came with hopes, expectations, and cameras, ready to witness what many believed would be the most significant royal Christmas tradition in decades. But, behind the palace walls, conversations whispered in hallways carried more weight than any crown jewel. William and Catherine exchanged worried glances over their morning tea, knowing that every step they took today would be scrutinized by a world watching for signs of unity or discord. Harry's absence felt like a wound that refused to heal, while Anne's steady presence provided the backbone of strength the family desperately needed. Even young Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis seemed to sense that this wasn't just another family gathering, this was history in the making. As church bells began to ring across the Norfolk countryside, signaling the approach of Christmas morning, Charles took a deep breath and prepared to face not just his subjects, but his destiny. What happened in the next few hours would determine whether the House of Windsor could adapt to a modern world while honoring centuries of tradition, or whether the cracks that had been forming for years would finally become too wide to bridge. The stage was set for a Christmas morning that would be remembered not just for its pageantry, but for the very human drama that unfolded beneath the royal smiles and waves. The grandfather clock in the main hallway of Sandringham House chimed 7 times, its deep resonance echoing through corridors that had witnessed over a century of royal Christmases. King Charles III stood in his private study, surrounded by the familiar scent of old leather books and the faint aroma of pine from the enormous Christmas tree that dominated the main drawing room. His hands, weathered by age but steady with purpose, held a cup of Darjeeling tea as he gazed out at the estate grounds where morning joggers had already begun to appear along the public footpaths. The weight of this particular Christmas morning pressed down on him differently than any other in his 75 years of life. As a child, he had walked these same corridors with nervous excitement, knowing that the Christmas morning walkabout meant putting on his best behavior for the cameras and the crowds. As a young man, he had learned to balance the joy of the season with the responsibility of royal duty. As a father, he had guided William and Harry through their own first experiences with the traditional walk to church, teaching them how to smile genuinely while maintaining the proper distance that royalty required. But, now, as king, every gesture carried the weight of the crown. Every smile would be analyzed for signs of confidence or uncertainty. Every interaction with his family would be scrutinized for evidence of the tensions that had been building for months, if not years. The British press had been particularly relentless in their coverage of the family dynamics, especially since Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from royal duties and their subsequent interviews that had sent shockwaves through the establishment. Charles walked slowly toward the window that overlooked the main approach to Sandringham House. Already, he could see the first early arrivals among the public, bundled up in heavy coats and carrying folding chairs. These were the dedicated royal watchers, the ones who came every year regardless of weather or circumstances. Some of them had been making this pilgrimage for decades, becoming as much a part of the tradition as the royal family itself. Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, 83 years old and a fixture at royal events for over 50 years, was already positioned at her usual spot near the church gate. Charles could see her distinctive purple coat and the thermos of hot chocolate that had become her trademark. The King's private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, knocked softly on the study door before entering with a folder containing the morning schedule and security briefings. "Good morning, Your Majesty," he said with the formal courtesy that had become second nature after decades of royal service. "The weather forecast remains favorable, and the local police report that crowd control measures are in place. The family has been briefed on the revised route that accommodates the larger-than-expected gathering." Charles nodded, accepting the folder but not immediately opening it. He had been hoping for a smaller, more intimate gathering this year, given the circumstances. The absence of Harry and Meghan created a noticeable gap in the family lineup, one that would be impossible to ignore despite the presence of other family members. The media had been speculating for weeks about whether there might be a surprise reconciliation, a last-minute appearance that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. But Charles knew better than to hope for miracles, especially during the holiday season when emotions ran highest and expectations often led to disappointment. "How are William and Catherine this morning?" Charles asked, genuinely concerned about his eldest son and daughter-in-law. The Prince and Princess of Wales had been bearing an increasingly heavy burden as the monarchy adapted to its new reality. William, in particular, had been struggling with the balance between supporting his father and managing his own growing responsibilities as heir to the throne. "They're in good spirits, sir," Alderton replied. Princess Catherine spent some time with the children this morning, helping them prepare for the walkabout. Prince George has been asking questions about the significance of the tradition, and Princess Charlotte has been practicing her waves. A small smile crossed the private secretary's face. Prince Louis, as expected, is more interested in the possibility of seeing the horses that sometimes accompany the crowd. This brought a genuine laugh from Charles, the first real moment of lightness he had felt all morning. His grandchildren had always been a source of joy, their innocence and curiosity providing a welcome contrast to the weight of royal responsibility. George, at 10 years old, was beginning to understand the significance of his position in the line of succession, asking thoughtful questions about duty and service that reminded Charles of his own childhood conversations with his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. The memory of his mother brought a familiar pang of grief mixed with determination. This would be the first Christmas walkabout without her steadying presence, the first time the family would navigate this beloved tradition without her experienced guidance. Elizabeth II had perfected the art of the Christmas walkabout over her 70-year reign, understanding instinctively how to balance accessibility with majesty, warmth with dignity. Charles had watched her year after year, learning from her example even as he developed his own approach to connecting with the public. As he finally opened the folder containing the morning's briefings, Charles reviewed the security arrangements that had become increasingly complex in recent years. The popularity of the Christmas walkabout had grown exponentially with social media, drawing larger crowds from across the United Kingdom and around the world. What had once been a primarily local tradition, attended mostly by residents of the Norfolk area, had evolved into a major royal event that required careful coordination between multiple agencies. The route from Sandringham House to St. Mary Magdalene Church covered approximately half a mile, winding through the estate grounds and along a public footpath that had been used by the royal family for generations. Security teams had spent weeks preparing for every possible scenario, while still maintaining the accessible, informal atmosphere that made the walkabout special. The balance between safety and tradition required constant adjustment, especially in an era when threats could come from unexpected directions. Charles's mind wandered to his childhood memories of Christmas mornings at Sandringham, when the family was smaller and the security concerns were simpler. He remembered walking hand in hand with his sister and both of them bundled up in matching coats while their parents greeted well-wishers with the relaxed warmth that seemed to come naturally during the holiday season. Those early experiences had taught him that the Christmas walkabout was about more than royal protocol, it was about connecting with people during a time when family and tradition mattered most. The sound of voices in the corridor outside his study indicated that other family members were beginning to gather for the traditional pre-walkabout briefing. Charles could hear William's voice discussing logistics with a member of the security team, while Catherine's laughter suggested she was engaged in conversation with the children. Anne's distinctive, no-nonsense tone carried from the direction of the main staircase, probably coordinating with her own protection officers about the day's schedule. Taking a final sip of his tea, Charles straightened his shoulders and prepared to join his family. The next few hours would test everything he had learned about leadership, family dynamics, and the delicate art of public service. The Christmas walkabout had always been about presenting the royal family as accessible and united, but this year the stakes felt higher than ever. As he left his study and walked toward the main drawing room where his family was gathering, Charles carried with him the hopes and expectations of not just the crowds waiting outside, but of an entire nation looking to the monarchy for stability and continuity during uncertain times. The weight of tradition pressed down on his shoulders, but it also provided the foundation from which he would draw strength for the challenges ahead. The morning light streaming through the tall windows of Sandringham House illuminated a family preparing to step out into history, carrying forward a tradition that had endured through world wars, political upheavals, and personal tragedies. Whatever happened in the next few hours would become part of that continuing story, adding another chapter to the complex narrative of the British royal family's relationship with the people they served. The main drawing room at Sandringham House buzzed with the controlled energy that always preceded a royal public appearance. Catherine, Princess of Wales, knelt beside Prince Louis, adjusting his coat while simultaneously keeping an eye on Princess Charlotte, who was practicing her royal wave in front of an ornate mirror. The 7-year-old princess had become fascinated with the precise angle of the wrist that her great-grandmother had taught her during their last Christmas together, and she was determined to perfect the technique. "Mummy, how long do we have to walk?" Louis asked, his 5-year-old attention already wandering to the elaborate Christmas decorations that filled every corner of the room. The massive tree, adorned with ornaments collected by the royal family over generations, cast dancing shadows on the walls as morning sunlight filtered through its branches. "Not very long, darling," Catherine replied, her voice carrying the warm patience that had made her a beloved member of the royal family. "We'll walk to church, say hello to the people who've come to see us, and then we'll have our Christmas lunch. Grandpa Charles will be with us the whole time." William stood near the fireplace, engaged in quiet conversation with his aunt, Princess Anne. Their discussion appeared casual to anyone observing from across the room, but the tension in William's shoulders and the serious expression on Anne's face suggested they were addressing weightier matters than holiday pleasantries. As the heir to the throne, William had been increasingly involved in discussions about the monarchy's future direction, and Anne, with her decades of experience in royal duties, had become one of his most trusted advisors. "The numbers are higher than expected," Anne was saying, her voice low enough to avoid alarming the children. "The police estimate nearly 3,000 people along the route. That's almost double last year's turnout." She paused, considering the implications. The public interest in Charles's first Christmas as king is clearly significant, but it also means more variables to manage. William nodded, his mind already calculating the additional time the larger crowd would require. Each walkabout was carefully choreographed to ensure the family could interact meaningfully with as many people as possible while maintaining their schedule. More people meant more hands to shake, more children to greet, and more opportunities for unexpected moments that could define the entire event. "How is Father handling the pressure?" William asked, glancing toward the doorway where Charles was expected to appear at any moment. The relationship between father and son had evolved significantly since Charles's accession to the throne. What had once been the typical tensions between an heir eager to contribute and a parent reluctant to share responsibility had transformed into a genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared commitment to the monarchy's success. Anne's expression softened slightly, a rare display of emotion from the famously stoic princess. "He's carrying the weight well, but I can see it in his eyes. This is his first Christmas walkabout as king, and he knows the symbolism matters." The absence of Harry and Meghan creates a narrative that the press will exploit, regardless of how well the rest of us perform. The mention of Harry's name created a momentary silence between them. The youngest son of the king remained a complicated figure within the family dynamic. His decision to step back from royal duties and relocate to California had been understood, if not entirely accepted, by most family members. However, his subsequent public criticisms of the institution and certain family members had created wounds that remained tender despite the passage of time. Catherine, having successfully prepared the children for their public appearance, joined her husband and sister-in-law near the fireplace. Her presence immediately lightened the atmosphere, as it often did. The former Kate Middleton had developed an instinct for reading the emotional temperature of any room and adjusting her energy accordingly. "The children are excited," she reported, smoothing down a wrinkle in her emerald green coat. "George has been asking about the historical significance of the church service, and Charlotte wants to know if she'll meet any children her age in the crowd. Louis is mostly concerned about whether there will be dogs." This brought smiles from both William and Anne, who had watched the youngest prince develop a passionate fascination with any animal he encountered during royal engagements. Louis's genuine reactions to unexpected moments had provided some of the most endearing public moments in recent royal history, from his animated responses during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations to his enthusiastic waves during various official appearances. Speaking of dogs, and said with a hint of amusement, Charles has decided to bring 2 of the corgis along for part of the walk. He believes the public expects some continuity with Mother's traditions, and the dogs certainly provided memorable moments during her Christmas appearances. The decision to include the corgis was typical of Charles's thoughtful approach to his new role as king. He understood that the public's affection for Queen Elizabeth II extended to many aspects of her personal style and preferences, including her well-documented love for her corgi companions. By incorporating elements that reminded people of his mother's reign, Charles was acknowledging the public's grief while also establishing his own approach to royal traditions. Edward, Earl of Wessex, entered the drawing room with his wife Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, completing the adult family group that would participate in the Christmas walkabout. Edward's presence added a stabilizing influence to the family dynamic. As the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II, he had navigated the challenges of being a senior royal without the intense scrutiny that had followed his older siblings. Sophie, with her background in public relations, brought a strategic understanding of media management that had proven invaluable during challenging periods. The local organizers report that people began arriving before dawn. Edward informed the group, consulting notes from his conversation with palace staff. There are families who drove overnight from Scotland, university students home for the holidays, and quite a few international visitors. The enthusiasm is remarkable. Sophie added her own observations from reviewing the security briefings. Social media monitoring suggests largely positive sentiment, with people expressing genuine excitement about Charles's first Christmas as king. However, there are some organized groups planning to use the event to highlight various political causes. Nothing threatening, but worth being aware of. The contemporary reality of royal public appearances included constant monitoring of social media platforms, where public opinion could shift rapidly and organized campaigns could materialize with little warning. The Christmas walkabout, with its informal atmosphere and extensive media coverage, provided an ideal platform for anyone seeking to deliver a message to a global audience. Charles finally entered the drawing room, his presence immediately commanding attention despite his relaxed demeanor. He had chosen a traditional navy overcoat that had belonged to his father, Prince Philip, a subtle tribute that he knew observant members of the public and press would notice and appreciate. The gesture represented his approach to kingship, honoring the past while moving confidently into the future. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice carrying the warmth that had become more evident since his accession to the throne. The burden of waiting to become king had been replaced by the satisfaction of finally being able to serve in the role he had prepared for his entire life. "I trust everyone slept well and is ready for our Christmas morning adventure." The grandchildren immediately gravitated toward their grandfather, with Louis taking his hand while George and Charlotte flanked him on either side. The image of the king surrounded by the next generation of royals would undoubtedly become one of the defining photographs of the day, symbolizing the continuity and future of the monarchy. "Grandpa, will we see Mrs. Hartwell today?" Charlotte asked, referring to the elderly woman who had become something of a celebrity among royal watchers for her decades of faithful attendance at royal events. The princess had met Mrs. Hartwell during previous Christmas walkabouts and had been charmed by the woman's stories and gentle manner. "I'm certain we will," Charles replied, genuinely pleased by his granddaughter's question. "She sent word through her granddaughter that she's looking forward to wishing us a happy Christmas. Perhaps we can spend a few extra minutes with her today." These personal connections were what made the Christmas walkabout meaningful beyond its role as a public relations exercise. Over the years, regular attendees had become familiar faces, their own family stories intertwining with the royal family's public narrative. Children who had been brought to their first Christmas walkabout in strollers were now bringing their own children, creating generational bonds that strengthened the monarchy's connection to ordinary British families. William stepped forward, consulting his watch and catching his father's attention. "The schedule suggests we should begin making our way to the starting point. The advance team reports that the crowd is well organized and enthusiastic." As the family prepared to leave the warmth and privacy of Sandringham House for the public arena of the Christmas walkabout, each member carried their own hopes and concerns for the day ahead. The bonds between them, strengthened by shared experience and common purpose, would be tested by the demands of public service and the scrutiny of a watching world. But, in this moment, surrounded by family and filled with the spirit of Christmas morning, they were simply parents, grandparents, and children preparing to share their holiday joy with anyone who had chosen to join them on this special day. The massive oak doors of Sandringham House swung open to reveal a crisp December morning that sparkled with frost and possibility. King Charles III stepped onto the familiar gravel pathway, immediately feeling the subtle shift in atmosphere that always accompanied the transition from private family gathering to public royal engagement. The morning air carried the distant sounds of voices and excitement from the crowds gathered along the Walkabout route, their anticipation creating an almost tangible energy that seemed to pulse through the Norfolk countryside. Behind him, the royal family emerged in carefully coordinated groups, their formation the result of decades of experience and subtle protocol adjustments. William and Catherine flanked their children, creating a protective family unit while maintaining the accessibility that made the Christmas Walkabout special. Princess Anne walked with confident strides that reflected her status as one of the hardest-working members of the royal family, her practical approach to royal duty evident in every gesture. Edward and Sophie completed the group, their presence providing additional stability and representing the broader royal family's commitment to public service. The first section of the Walkabout route led through the immediate grounds of Sandringham House, where a smaller group of invited guests and estate workers had gathered. These were people whose lives were directly connected to the royal estate, gardeners who maintained the magnificent grounds, housekeeping staff who ensured the comfort of royal visitors, and local officials who coordinated community events throughout the year. For them, this was an opportunity to interact with the royal family in a more personal setting before the larger public encounter began. Mrs. Margaret Thompson, the head housekeeper who had served the royal family for 37 years, stood near the main pathway with her husband and adult children. She had witnessed the evolution of Christmas traditions at Sandringham across multiple generations, from the formal ceremonies of earlier decades to the more relaxed atmosphere that characterized contemporary royal celebrations. Her weathered hands held a small bouquet of holly and ivy grown in the estate gardens and prepared as a traditional Christmas offering. Charles approached Mrs. Thompson with the genuine warmth that had developed between them over their long association. "Margaret, how wonderful to see you and your family this morning," he said, accepting the bouquet while simultaneously acknowledging her husband and children with individual greetings. "These are beautiful, from the walled garden, I assume?" "Yes, Your Majesty," she replied, her voice carrying a mixture of formality and affection that reflected the unique relationship between long-serving royal staff and the family they served. "The holly berries are particularly abundant this year. We've taken it as a good omen for the coming year." The exchange, though brief, demonstrated the personal connections that formed the foundation of the royal family's relationship with the broader community surrounding Sandringham. These were not distant subjects to be acknowledged with formal politeness, but rather individuals whose lives had become intertwined with the royal families through years of shared experience and mutual respect. As the family progressed along the route, the sounds of the larger crowd began to grow more distinct. Voices called out greetings in multiple languages, children's laughter mixed with the clicking of camera shutters, and the general buzz of excitement that always surrounded major royal appearances created a symphony of anticipation that seemed to energize everyone present. Prince George walked beside his grandfather, his posture reflecting the careful coaching he had received about public appearances. At 10 years old, he was beginning to understand the significance of his position as third in line to the throne, but he still retained the natural curiosity and spontaneity of childhood. His questions about the Walkabout tradition had prompted several detailed conversations with Charles, who was eager to pass on the wisdom and understanding that his own mother had shared with him decades earlier. "Grandpa, why do some people travel so far just to wave at us?" George asked, his young mind struggling to comprehend the level of dedication shown by royal watchers who journeyed hundreds of miles for a brief interaction with the royal family. Charles considered the question carefully, recognizing its importance not just for George's understanding but for his own approach to public service. "I think," he said slowly, "that people come because the royal family represents something larger than ourselves. We symbolize continuity, tradition, and shared values that connect people across different backgrounds and experiences. When they wave at us, they're really celebrating what we all have in common." The wisdom in this response reflected Charles's decades of contemplation about the monarchy's role in modern society. Unlike some of his ancestors, who might have viewed public adoration as a natural right of birth, Charles understood that the respect and affection shown by the public was something to be earned through service and maintained through consistent demonstration of dedication to the common good. Princess Charlotte, walking between her parents, had developed her own relationship with the crowds that gathered for royal events. Her natural charm and genuine interest in meeting new people had made her a favorite among royal watchers, who appreciated her willingness to engage in conversation and her obvious delight in the interaction. During previous Christmas walkabouts, she had asked thoughtful questions about people's holiday traditions and shown remarkable patience with the lengthy photo sessions that inevitably accompanied royal encounters. As they approached the main gathering area where the largest crowds waited, the volume of voices and excitement increased dramatically. Security personnel, who had been positioned along the route with careful attention to maintaining the event's informal atmosphere, signaled that all systems were functioning smoothly and that the crowd's mood remained enthusiastic and welcoming. The first major interaction point brought the royal family face-to-face with a group of children from local schools who had been given special positions near the front of the crowd. Their teachers had prepared them for weeks, discussing the significance of the Christmas walkabout and coaching them on appropriate behavior for meeting members of the royal family. However, no amount of preparation could contain the natural excitement of children encountering real-life royalty during the magic of Christmas morning. 8-year-old Emma Watson, from Sandringham Primary School, had been selected by her classmates to present a card created by the entire school. The handmade Christmas card featured drawings from students of all ages, with messages expressing their hopes for the king's first Christmas on the throne and their excitement about meeting the royal family. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she held the card, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment but determined to represent her school with honor. Catherine, recognizing the child's nervousness, knelt down to Emma's eye level, immediately putting her at ease with a warm smile and gentle voice. "What a beautiful card! Did everyone in your school help make this?" she asked, genuinely interested in the collaborative effort that the artwork represented. Emma's nervousness dissolved under Catherine's kind attention, and she began to explain enthusiastically about the weeks of preparation that had gone into creating the perfect Christmas card for the royal family. Other children in the group were drawn into the conversation, each eager to share their own contributions to the project and to ask questions about royal life that reflected their innocent curiosity about a world so different from their own daily experiences. William joined the interaction, his own experience as a father making him particularly skilled at connecting with young people. He listened attentively as the children described their Christmas plans and shared their excitement about the school holidays ahead. His questions about their favorite subjects and holiday traditions demonstrated the genuine interest that had made him an effective advocate for children's causes throughout his adult life. Meanwhile, Charles moved along the crowd line, engaging in the countless brief but meaningful interactions that define successful royal walkabouts. Each encounter required him to quickly assess the person's particular interest or background and respond accordingly, drawing on decades of experience in public engagement to find common ground and create memorable moments for people who might never again have such an opportunity. An elderly veteran, decorated with medals from his service in the Falklands War, waited patiently for his chance to speak with the king. Their conversation, though necessarily brief given the large crowd, touched on themes of service, sacrifice, and the changing nature of military duty across different generations. Charles's own military background and long-standing support for veterans' causes provided natural talking points that created genuine connection despite the constraints of time and public setting. A young mother, holding her infant daughter while managing an energetic toddler, represented the contemporary challenges facing British families. Her brief conversation with the royal family members touched on topics ranging from the joys and difficulties of parenting to the importance of family traditions during the holiday season. Catherine's own experiences as a mother of 3 young children provided natural rapport, while Charles's role as grandfather added another dimension to the family-focused interaction. The Christmas walkabout continued to unfold as a complex tapestry of individual encounters, each contributing to the larger narrative of royal accessibility and public connection that defined this beloved tradition. Every handshake, every smile, and every brief conversation added another thread to the intricate relationship between the monarchy and the people it served, creating memories that would last far beyond the Christmas season and contributing to the enduring bond between the royal family and the British public. The morning sun climbed higher above the Norfolk countryside, casting longer shadows across the walkabout route as the royal family progressed toward St. Mary Magdalene Church. What had begun as a carefully orchestrated public appearance was evolving into something more organic and meaningful, as genuine connections formed between the royals and the diverse crowd that had gathered to share this Christmas morning experience. Near the halfway point of the route, an unexpected encounter would become one of the day's most memorable moments. 17-year-old Marcus Chen, a recent immigrant from Hong Kong whose family had relocated to Britain following political upheavals in his homeland, stood nervously among a group of young adults from the local community college. His English, though functional, carried the uncertainty of someone still adapting to a new culture and language. What made his presence particularly poignant was the small Union Jack flag he held, painted with traditional Chinese characters that spelled out "thank you" in elegant calligraphy. When King Charles approached the group of young people, his attention was immediately drawn to Marcus's unique flag. The combination of British and Chinese symbols represented exactly the kind of cultural bridge building that Charles had advocated for throughout his decades of public service. His long-standing interest in cultural diversity and interfaith dialogue had prepared him for moments like this, where genuine human connection could transcend political boundaries and cultural differences. "That's a beautiful flag," Charles said, pausing longer than usual to examine Marcus's artwork. "Did you create the calligraphy yourself?" The question, asked with genuine curiosity rather than polite obligation, immediately put Marcus at ease and drew him into conversation despite his initial nervousness about his English-speaking abilities. Marcus's face lit up with pride as he explained the meaning behind his creation. "I wanted to thank Britain for welcoming my family," he said, his words carefully chosen but filled with sincere emotion. "In Hong Kong, we learned about the royal family in school. Meeting you today feels like a dream." His voice carried the gratitude of someone who had found sanctuary in a new homeland while maintaining deep respect for the traditions and culture he had left behind. The conversation that followed, though conducted in the public eye with cameras capturing every moment, took on an intimate quality that reflected the best aspects of royal public engagement. Charles asked thoughtful questions about Marcus's family's journey to Britain, their adaptation to life in Norfolk, and their hopes for the future. His genuine interest in Marcus's story demonstrated the monarch's understanding that the strength of Britain lay not just in its historical traditions but in its ability to welcome and integrate new citizens who brought their own valuable perspectives and contributions. Catherine, who had been engaging with other members of the crowd nearby, was drawn into the conversation by Marcus's mention of his younger sister, who was studying at the local primary school. As a mother herself, Catherine understood the particular challenges facing immigrant families trying to help their children adapt to new educational and social environments while maintaining their cultural identity. "How is your sister adjusting to school here?" Catherine asked, her question reflecting both personal interest and her broader advocacy for children's welfare and education. Marcus's response revealed the complex emotions experienced by many immigrant families: gratitude for opportunities combined with the ongoing challenges of cultural adaptation and the desire to maintain connections to their heritage. The interaction with Marcus represented more than just a pleasant encounter during a royal walkabout. It symbolized the evolution of British society and the monarchy's role in embracing the change while honoring traditional values. For the crowd watching the exchange, many of whom had their own family stories of immigration, adaptation, or cultural bridging, the moment demonstrated the royal family's commitment to representing all British citizens regardless of their backgrounds or origins. As the family continued along the route, they encountered Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, the 83-year-old royal watcher who had become a beloved fixture at royal events. Her distinctive purple coat and warm smile had made her a favorite among both the royal family and other regular attendees at royal functions. This Christmas morning, however, Mrs. Hartwell carried additional significance as one of the few people present who had personal memories of every monarch since George VI. Charles approached Mrs. Hartwell with particular warmth, recognizing not just her decades of loyal support but also her role as a living connection to the monarchy's history. Their conversation, conducted against the backdrop of excited voices and camera clicks, took on the quality of a reunion between old friends rather than a formal royal encounter. "Your Majesty, you look splendid this morning," Mrs. Hartwell said, her voice carrying the confidence that came from years of royal interactions. "Your mother would be so proud to see you leading the family today." The reference to Queen Elizabeth II, made with the gentle directness that only comes with age and experience, brought visible emotion to Charles's face and demonstrated the deep personal connections that had formed over decades of public service. "She loved these Christmas mornings," Charles replied, his voice carrying both sadness and gratitude. "I think she would be pleased to see the tradition continuing with a new generation." He gestured toward his grandchildren, who were engaged in animated conversation with other children in the crowd, their natural enthusiasm creating some of the day's most genuine moments. Mrs. Hartwell's response reflected the wisdom that comes from witnessing historical transitions across multiple generations. "Every generation brings something new while honoring what came before," she said. "That's what makes these traditions so special. They grow and change while staying true to their essential purpose." The conversation with Mrs. Hartwell represented one of many intergenerational connections that characterized the Christmas walkabout. Throughout the crowd, grandparents who had attended royal events for decades stood alongside children experiencing their first royal encounter, creating a living timeline of British social history. These connections between past and present, tradition and innovation, provided the emotional foundation that made the walkabout more than just a public relations exercise. Prince Louis, whose attention had been captured by a golden retriever accompanying one of the families in the crowd, created an unscripted moment that would become one of the day's most endearing images. The 5-year-old prince's immediate fascination with the dog led to an impromptu interaction with the animal's owner, 70-year-old retired teacher Janet Morrison, who had brought her therapy dog Charlie to the walkabout as a way of spreading Christmas joy to other attendees. "Can I pet your dog?" Louis asked with the directness that only children possess, his formal royal training temporarily forgotten in the face of canine excitement. His question, overheard by nearby security personnel and family members, created a moment of gentle amusement that perfectly captured the balance between royal protocol and family authenticity that defined the modern monarchy's public image. Janet Morrison, initially overwhelmed by the unexpected royal attention focused on her beloved pet, quickly warmed to the interaction as Louis demonstrated his natural affinity for animals. "Charlie loves meeting new people," she explained as the golden retriever responded enthusiastically to Louis's gentle petting. "He's actually a therapy dog who visits the local hospital and nursing homes. He has a special talent for making people smile." The conversation about Charlie's work as a therapy dog opened up broader discussions about community service, animal welfare, and the various ways individuals could contribute to the well-being of others. William and Catherine, who had joined the interaction to supervise Louis's enthusiastic animal encounter, found themselves engaged in meaningful dialogue about voluntary service and the importance of finding personal ways to help others, particularly during the Christmas season when acts of kindness took on special significance. These unplanned moments, arising spontaneously from genuine human connections rather than carefully orchestrated protocol, demonstrated the Christmas walkabout's unique ability to create authentic relationships between the royal family and the public they served. Each interaction, whether brief or extended, formal or informal, contributed to the larger narrative of accessibility and shared humanity that defined the monarchy's role in contemporary British society. As the family neared the final approach to St. Mary Magdalene Church, the culminating destination of their Christmas morning journey, the accumulation of individual encounters had created something greater than the sum of its parts. The walkabout had become a celebration of community, diversity, tradition, and hope that transcended the boundaries between royalty and citizens, creating shared memories that would endure long after the Christmas decorations were packed away and normal routines resumed. The bells of St. Mary Magdalene began to ring across the Norfolk countryside, calling the faithful to Christmas morning service and signaling the approaching conclusion of the walkabout portion of the royal family's public Christmas celebration. But the connections made and memories created during their journey from Sandringham House would continue to resonate in the hearts and minds of everyone who had participated in this special tradition. The ancient stone walls of St. Mary Magdalene Church rose before the royal family as they completed their Christmas morning walkabout, the Norman architecture standing as a testament to centuries of faith and tradition that had endured through countless changes in British society. The church bells, which had been ringing intermittently throughout their journey, now pealed with the full ceremonial weight appropriate for Christmas morning and the arrival of the sovereign and his family for divine service. As King Charles III approached the church entrance, he paused for a moment to look back at the crowd that had accompanied them on their walk from Sandringham House. Hundreds of faces, representing every age and background imaginable, smiled and waved from behind the respectful barriers that had been erected to maintain order while preserving the Walkabout's intimate atmosphere. The sight filled him with a profound sense of gratitude and responsibility that went far beyond the formal obligations of kingship. The final interactions before entering the church took on special significance, as tradition dictated that these would be the last public encounters of the Christmas morning ceremony. Charles made his way along the gathered crowd one final time, ensuring that as many people as possible had the opportunity for a personal moment with their sovereign during this special celebration. Near the church gate, he encountered a group of nurses from the nearby Queen Elizabeth Hospital who had been given time off from their Christmas Day shifts to attend the walkabout. Their presence reminded him of the countless essential workers who continued their service even during the holiday season, ensuring that others could celebrate safely and securely. Head nurse Patricia Williams, representing her colleagues, presented Charles with a simple card signed by the entire hospital staff, expressing their gratitude for the royal family's long-standing support of healthcare workers and their commitment to public service. "Your Majesty, we wanted you to know how much your support has meant to us, especially during the challenging years we've all experienced," Patricia said, her words carrying the weight of professional experience and personal gratitude. "Knowing that the royal family understands and values our work makes a real difference in our daily lives." Charles accepted the card with visible emotion, understanding that this simple gesture represented the dedication of thousands of healthcare workers across the United Kingdom who had served with extraordinary commitment during difficult times. "The debt is entirely ours," he replied. "Your service to others, particularly during challenging circumstances, exemplifies the very best of British values and character." The conversation with the healthcare workers represented the deeper meaning behind the Christmas walkabout, the recognition and celebration of service in all its forms, from the formal duties of royalty to the daily dedication of ordinary citizens who contributed to the well-being of their communities. These connections between the monarchy and various forms of public service reinforced the institution's relevance and its role in acknowledging and encouraging civic engagement. Princess Anne, ever practical and focused on the schedule, gently reminded the family that the church service was about to begin. Her subtle intervention ensured that the transition from public walkabout to private worship would occur smoothly, maintaining the balance between accessibility and appropriate boundaries that characterized successful royal events. As the family entered St. Mary Magdalene Church, they were greeted by the familiar warmth and peace that had made this small Norfolk church special to multiple generations of royals. The interior, decorated with traditional Christmas arrangements of holly, ivy, and winter flowers grown on the Sandringham estate, provided an intimate contrast to the public spectacle of the walkabout. Here, surrounded by the symbols and rituals of Christian faith, the royal family could participate in worship as a family rather than as public figures. The Christmas morning service, conducted by the Reverend Canon Jonathan Riviere, focused on themes of service, gratitude, and hope that resonated deeply with the royal family's own understanding of their role in society. The readings, chosen specifically for their relevance to contemporary challenges and opportunities, emphasized the importance of community, the value of diversity, and the responsibility of those in positions of influence to serve others with humility and dedication. During the service, Charles found his thoughts returning to the encounters of the morning walkabout. Marcus Chen's gratitude for Britain's welcome to his family, Mrs. Hartwell's wisdom about the continuity of tradition across generations, the healthcare workers' dedication to serving others, and countless other individual stories had created a tapestry of human experience that illuminated the monarchy's purpose and potential in the modern world. The prayers offered during the service included special intentions for those serving others during the Christmas season, healthcare workers, emergency responders, military personnel stationed far from home, and volunteers working to ensure that no one spent Christmas alone or in need. These prayers reflected the royal family's understanding that their privileged position carried with it the obligation to remember and honor those whose service made civilized society possible. Following the church service, as the family prepared to return to Sandringham House for their private Christmas celebrations, they were once again greeted by the crowd that had waited patiently during the religious ceremony. The atmosphere had, if anything, become more relaxed and joyful during their absence, as people had used the time to share stories, exchange contact information, and form new friendships based on their common experience of attending the royal Christmas walkabout. The return journey to Sandringham House provided additional opportunities for interaction, but with a different quality than the earlier encounters. Having successfully completed the formal aspects of the Christmas morning tradition, the royal family approached these final conversations with a relaxed warmth that reflected their satisfaction with the day's achievements and their genuine pleasure in meeting so many dedicated and interesting people. Prince George, who had observed every aspect of the morning's events with the careful attention of someone learning his future role, asked his grandfather a question that would stay with Charles for years to come.
"Grandpa, why do you think so many people came today? What did they really want from us?"
Charles considered the question carefully, recognizing its importance not just for George's understanding but for his own reflection on the day's significance. "I think," he said slowly, "they came because they wanted to be part of something larger than themselves. The Christmas walkabout isn't really about meeting us as individuals, it's about celebrating the values and traditions we all share, and renewing our commitment to supporting each other and our community." The wisdom in this response reflected the insights gained from decades of public service and the particular clarity that had emerged during the morning's interactions. The Christmas walkabout had demonstrated that the monarchy's value lay not in its exclusivity or mystique, but in its ability to bring people together around shared values of service, tradition, and mutual support. As Sandringham House came into view, its windows glowing warmly in the afternoon light, the royal family could reflect on a successful Christmas morning that had strengthened both their bonds with each other and their connection to the British people. The walkabout had achieved its multiple purposes, honoring tradition, celebrating community, demonstrating accessibility, and creating positive memories that would endure long after the holiday season had ended. The hundreds of photographs taken during the walkabout would appear in newspapers and social media feeds around the world, but the real impact of the event lay in the personal connections made and the renewed sense of shared purpose that had been created. Every handshake, every conversation, and every smile had contributed to the ongoing relationship between the monarchy and the people it served, ensuring that this ancient institution remained relevant and meaningful in the contemporary world. Back at Sandringham House, as the family gathered for their private Christmas lunch, they carried with them the warmth and energy of their morning among the public. The Christmas walkabout had reminded them why their service mattered and had provided the inspiration that would sustain them through the challenges and opportunities of the coming year. Outside, the crowds gradually dispersed, but the spirit of Christmas morning lingered in the Norfolk countryside. The tradition would continue, evolving with each passing year while maintaining its essential character as a celebration of community, service, and the enduring bonds that united the royal family with the people of Britain. King Charles III had successfully led his first Christmas walkabout as sovereign, establishing his own approach to this beloved tradition while honoring the memory and example of those who had gone before him.